how to navigate through the HX Edit software. So this is what it looks like. In order to open the software, you need to connect via USB from the back of your Helix product, whatever it's the Floor, LT, HX Stomp, whatever Helix model you have, and connect it to your laptop and download the HX Edit on the Line 6 website. Make sure you have an account and you sign in, and then this is what's all going to look like. Okay, so I'm not going to go into full detail of what each individual option does, like the Variax model and the bypass stuff, and like the split A to pad B and vice versa. So I'm just going to give out just the essentials that you'll be needing to start out if you're making your tone for the first time. So as you can see here, I have a list of patches that I'm creating. Some patches that I've downloaded. For example, this some I'm downloading. I've downloaded this patch, which is created by a company called Worship Tutorials. I actually just downloaded this before I even start making this video. And as of now, I'm downloading another patch for the Helix. But these right here are Helix's patches that I've created, from the signature all the way down. So you can see I got the flashback. Here's the sub down, which is a bass patch. I have nuclear, which is a high gain setting. I have rockatone, which is what I'm currently trying to work at the moment. But essentially, this section here is going to be where your presets is going to be loaded in. And it all corresponds to which set list you're in. So, for example, you have factories 1 and 2. But you have users 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Basically what that means is that they're basically user patches, which means that you can create your own patch however you like. However, if you prefer to use the factory presets, all you gotta do on the HX Edit or on the Helix is to either press the big toggle switch, toggle button, knob thing on the left side of the screen, and that will take you to this page like this. Or on your HX Edit, you want to go to where it says User, and then choose your set list type. In this case, I'm going to choose Factory 1. And you can see here you have all the patches that came out from the Line 6 factory. So if I want to add, let's say, let's use this one. All I got to do is double click, and then it's going to load up the patch right here, as well as on the Helix. So it's going to load up right there. So and you can scroll through any more patches, like the Goat Rodeo, which I believe it is a country patch. Not sure, or it could be a metal patch. I haven't played with the stock patches because I just make my own. But you have a list of patches that you have. You go to Factory 2, and you have more stuff as well. You have Eat It, you have Andy Warhol, you have Breath of Odin, you have a ton. I mean a ton. But right here, 24D Factory 2 is when the user presets are gonna start. So, and you go to users 1 and 2, which are basically factory stock empty presets, which you can then use to create your own. In this case, I'm going to load up my signature patch. So double click that, and here I have my signature patch on the Helix. And we go to templates. That'll basically give you like a kind of like a template preloaded patch that you can then customize however you like. So they have different types based on amp models, based on different characteristics like guitars and vocals. Pro Tools Max type Helix patch. You have Logic and GarageBand types. You have a couple of stuff that you can do. You can see you have effects loops and the 4 cable method as well. You have a ton of different things that you can do to kind of get started with your patch making journey. Let's go back to user 1. So let's say that I'm going to create a patch from scratch. You don't want to mess with the other patches that I have here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to choose which of the new preset sections I'm going to select. So in this case, I'm going to choose, let's see, 05B on user 1, new preset. Double click, and as you can see, this right here is your entire signal chain. So this is where the input comes in, and this can be either your first out or an extension of your first chain to the second chain, but it's still going out. So if you do want to connect two things, you just have the single line here and have another input here. Or if you want to make it the entire thing, if you want to connect the first to the bottom, you can do that by clicking on multi, and then you want to go to your output and select where do you want this to be the output. So you can choose multiple outputs from 1/4 inch, XLR, you know, the effects and all the stuff. Let's say I want to continue the signal chain and make it as big as possible. Well, I'm going to go ahead and do pass 2. So that is now connected to this. So this whole thing is now a full signal chain. So here you have your guitar that's coming all the way here, sending that also down here, which is another extension, and it goes out to your output source. And it can be any type. You can set the multi-out to be just 1/4 inch, your XLRs, your sends, your USBs, vice versa. So if we go to the multi-input, you can choose your input types. So if you want to be just guitar, you click on guitar, and that's it. If you want to choose aux, you can go ahead, click aux. A Variax, which is a specific Line 6 guitar model that does a ton of things that I don't want to talk about. A mic, effects loop returns, USBs, and vice versa. I'm going to go ahead and choose guitar. Okay. Whenever I start making a patch, I always go between the middle signal chain, like these two middle spots. And then I would click on the spots that's highlighted. And then, right down here, you have a lot of selections that you can choose. You can choose your favorites, which I do have just 3 after making the Rockatone patch, which I'm currently making. You can choose between distortion types, which includes boost, overdrives, and distortion type blocks. You can also, on the top of the selected pedals and stomps, you can switch if you want the whole thing to be in mono, stereo, which is going to give out more of a expanded range, and you have legacy. Legacy is basically one of the most popular Line 6's kind of like stomps that is being used in every single Line 6 product, and the ones that's basically Line 6 original and reissues. So for example, the Screamer is based off of the TS-808 Tube Screamer. The Tube Drive is based on the full tone vintage tube overdrive pedal. And then you have you have the classic disc, which is based off of the Broco Rat distortion. And you have the L6 drive, which is based off of the Line 6 overdrive model they have. Facial Fuzz is based off of a fuzz pedal from Electro Harmonics. And so you have a couple of different legendary legacy stomps that you can choose, and it applies with any selection you want to add. So let's say we're gonna go ahead and choose an amp to start off. I always like to start my patch with an amp. So you have 4 to 5 different types of amps. IRs is going to be a little bit different. I might explain IRs in a different video. But here, you have 4 different amp sections. You have an amp cab duo, which is basically an amp and a cabinet together. Or you can separate and just have a normal amp. You can go preamp, which is like a direct box kind of, that also acts as an amp inside. And then you have a cabinet that's separated. So let's say I want to make at least a good, nice Fender Strat tone. Alright? I have a Fender Strat. I want to make at least a good Fender kind of sound. So I'm going to go ahead and choose my amp. Okay? I don't have my guitar connected at the moment, so I cannot play. But this is to give you an idea. And then you have, again, a wide range of amps. Also, I forgot to mention too that the Helix in general is not only for guitar use only. If you go click here, you can choose also for the bass models too, which they have a ton of different bass amps and cabs together. If we go to here, we go duo, if we go all the way down, you can see from the amp peg all the way to the bottom is all the bass cabs. So it's pretty cool. Anyways, let's go ahead and choose an amp. So like I said, I want to have a nice kind of Strat Fender tone. So I have 3 options. One option B is to go to the tweed side. So I have the blues normal and the blues bright. The second option would be I go to the Fullerton amps, which is kind of a blending of like an orange and a Fender together. But then the US is basically like the deluxe reverbs, the champions, the Princetons, all the stuff. So let's say I'm gonna choose this one, the US Princess. This is based off of the Princeton 65 reverb amp from Fender. And here, once you load up the amp, you have different parameters that you can choose. The most common ones that you can find are drive, which is the gain overall saturation of the amp. And you have your 3-band EQ. You have bass, middle, and treble. My advice, if you want to start messing around with EQ, put them all flat, meaning make sure they're roughly about halfway. All the EQ, roughly halfway. And then just go ahead and start playing. And then you can then identify how much low end, how much high end, how much mid range I need. And also, it is based on the guitar you use. So if you use a Strat, it's going to be pretty bright, and you may not want a brighter sound. So you want to bring down the treble, leave a little bit of the mids, keep the bass pretty much almost the same. But let's say if you have a Les Paul combining with a Fender amp, which is what I have here, it's going to have a lot of low end because it is, made out of mahogany, the wood, and it has humbuckers. So it's going to give out a very big, punchy, warm sound. And you may not need a lot of low end, so you may want to reduce the bass, keep the mids a little bit less, and have the treble all the way, where it's supposed to be. So just kind of play around with it with your guitar, and also try to switch pickup positions, because that's going to really determine your character. The presence is also going to be common on most amps. It's essentially adding just a hair of brightness. So the treble is actually, like a very super, brightness sensitivity. The presence is kind of like, just have a slight hair. That's kind of what I noticed. Channel volume is basically like the drive volume. And the master volume is basically the overall volume of the amp. And you have a couple of different features of the amp to kind of like stand it out a little bit. So you have sag, you have hum, you have ripple, bias X, and vice versa. So I just play around with it, and I thought, okay, that's a good amp. I might as well keep it. But let's say if I don't like the amp and I want to change it. Well, you click on the amp that's already highlighted, and then you choose what other amps you want to choose. So Let's say if I don't want to have a Fender amp, I want to have a Vox amp. Well, the ASX all the way to the A30 is basically your Vox amps. So you have the ASX A15, the ASX A30, the A30 Fawn Normal, and the Bright. So let's say I want to choose an A30, which is based off of the Vox AC30, the most famous and popular amp of all. You can see it is different, and when you play it, it's going to sound different and feel different. So you can still change stuff on the highlighted selection that you've selected. And again, you can move some stuff around. If you want to be very specific on like how much you want to have the cuts, you can either just, just carefully move it, or you can just do little adjustments up and down like this. So that's that. Now let's say I'm cool. I love it. All right. Now we can go ahead and start adding effects. So let's say we want to start adding a overdrive. So I'm going to go ahead and choose which of the highlighted blocks I want to add my overdrive. So I'm going to go ahead and choose this one a little bit closer to the amp. Click on it, and then go ahead and choose my distortion type. And you have a ton of overdrives. Like I said, remember, you have mono stomps, you have stereo, and you have legacy. Let's choose the legacy stuff, for example. These overdrives are probably the most popular and used overdrive stomps and distortions that Line 6 have made in all of their models: the Pod Go, the HX Stomp, the Helix, all of the shenanigans, including older models like the Pod HT500 or the Firehawk, which is what I used before. But let's say I want to go ahead and choose a good legendary screamer. Now the question is, does the screamer has it right here? Yes, they do. It's kind of more premium, if that makes sense. The Scream 808, it's kind of more like a premium, kind of like a, overdrive. But I don't want to have like fancy stuff. I just want a good overdrive. So I want to go ahead and go to Screamer. And then you can see, same thing. You have, drives, bass, tone, treble, output. It's basically the same kind of idea to adjust like the amp. So obviously your drive is going to be like your overall, gain, how much gain you want. Your bass, treble, is your 2-band EQ. Your tone is basically kind of like the presence of how much of a hair you want to have, more on the bright side, on the low side. And your output is basically the overall volume of the effect. So you can make it louder, you can make it quieter, however you like. And I usually typically put it before the amp, because if I put it after the amp, it's going to be all muddy and just not sounding great. So most people would put the overdrives at the end. However, I do see people put some stuff after the amp, and it's insane. But I don't know, 99% of people just put the drives before the amp. So I just put it before the amp, and it works out for me. So I keep it that way. Also, let's say if you want to, like turn the effects on and off, there's a little on-off button on the top that you can click with the mouse. As you can see, once it's faded, it means it's off. Once I click on it, it's highlighted, which means that it's on. So you can bypass the stomp however you like. Also, let's say if you don't want the screamer, because you don't want to have it on the chain. Let's say you change your mind and you don't want to have a rock sound. You just want a good jazzy sound. You don't want overdrives to it. I want to get rid of my signal chain. Well, just go ahead and click on the X, and that deletes the thing. So, yeah. So, anyways, let's go back and put the screamer in the chain. So there we go. I'm gonna move this, maybe just a little bit here on the drive, and then you're good. I'm gonna turn this off for now. Let's see what else I can add. Let's say I want to add a good delay. I'm going to choose after the amp, and I'm going to choose at the second row of the chain. So I'm going to go ahead and choose my block highlights, choose that one, And then I would go to the section here and click on delays. So you have a ton of delays. Let's say I'm gonna choose a, let's go with a stereo delay. How about that? And I'm gonna choose dual delay. So that way it will repeat back and forth, left and right. So one feedback on the left, second feedback on the right, it'll just bounce left and right because it's stereo. But if I don't want that, I just want a simple stereo, just click on this. And then it'll be just a normal, regular stereo. Delay. Regular delay, if that makes sense. So, yeah. And I can also change to mono if I want to. So in this case, I will do it. And here you go. You can see I'm back to mono. So, that's so cool about it. You can choose however you like. And like I said, you have a ton of options. You have distortions, dynamics, EQ, modulations, delays, reverbs, pitch and synth type effects, filters, wahs, amp and caps, amps, preamps, caps, IRs, volume and pan, send, and a looper. Let's continue to add like 2 more stuff. So what I would do is I would go ahead and, let's see, click on this. I'm going to add a modulation. So I'm going to go ahead and add a modulation. I'm going to choose a mono type. And I'm going to choose a good phaser. So I have, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4. So I have pretty much 4 to 5 phase selections. And flangers as well. You know what? I might as well go with a flanger. So let's go ahead and choose a flanger. Let's do the dynamics flanger. And as you can see, it is there. So again, you can move the parameters however you like as you're playing and demoing how it sounds. Again, make sure that you switch guitar pickups, and that will give you an idea of how you want the sound to be. So you can compare and contrast how blended you want in the sweet spot position you need for your tone. Right? Cool. I'm going to go ahead and shut these off. And this one too. I'm going to put in one more effect. I'm going to add a reverb pedal. Let's go ahead and choose a reverb pedal. I'm going to choose a stereo. And I'm going to go ahead and choose a dynamic plate. It's like a normal reverb that most people use. So you can choose your decay, which is how long you want the decay wave will be. A pre-delay is basically like a delay built in, but not as extreme. Dampening is basically how much you want to cut. Moderate is basically like kind of like the sound wave type. Your range is how wide you want to be. The mix is essentially how much of the wet effect you need. So if you have it like, you know, at around 50%, it's going to be 50% wet, 50% dry. Pull it all the way to the back, it's going to be 17% dry. And if you go all the way here, it'll be 60% wet. Put it all the way, so basically we'll just hear this wave and not your guitar. And of course your low frequency gain and cuts and high cuts is basically like kind of like your EQ, but you're basically moving different sound frequencies to just kind of get rid of those. So like if you're doing like a super highly bend and all of a sudden you hear like a high squeal, you want to make sure you move that by just moving these parameters. And level is basically how loud the effect will be. So if you want to make it lower or softer, vice versa. And the trails is actually very important. The trails is basically like, for example, I have it off. So basically what it means is that if I turn the effects on and I use it for a couple seconds, and then all of a sudden I don't need to have the reverb, the moment I shut it off, it'll basically cut the effect. But if I have the trail on and I play with the effect engaged and then I turn it off, it's gonna, you know, turn off the effect, but it's gonna leave like a wave. It's gonna fade the sound from the background. So it's just your decision if you want to have a trail on or off. I actually have 2 ambient reverbs that I had the trail on, just because I play a lot of CCM, a lot of worship, so I need the trail to be on the whole time. However, I can cut it off if I do have something in common, but I leave the trail all the way on. So yeah, anyways, that's just it. I'm just gonna add a couple more. Let's say I want to add a let's say a volume. I'll go ahead to put volume, and boom, there we go. It's on always. And let's say that it's totally ready. All right, it's totally ready. What you're gonna do is you're gonna go ahead and click on the top where it says new preset. You can name the preset however you like. So let's say I'm gonna do, let's see, I'm gonna type demo preset and click enter or return, and basically it will automatically save on your patch list right here. However, you can also save it manually right here and click on OK. And that will basically, of course, manually save the patch if you wish to do so. The snapshots is basically like presets within the preset, but I'm not going into that a little bit. Right over here is the undo button. So if you want to undo a couple things, just click on those, and there's a redo button as well. This one right here is basically when you have the delay feature on, it basically asks you how much tempo, you want the tempo to be reacting to. So if you want the tempo to be only in just this preset, in this case I have 74, but let's say if I want to switch to, let's say 84, I would just tap based on, you know, for my kind of, you know, there you go, 84.7, that's totally fine. Or I would just press and hold and then drag, which honestly, it did that before, but I don't know why. But also, what you can also do too is you can just click on this and then type manually. So if I want to choose 87, click on 87. Hold on, 87, click enter, and then that basically synchronizes the tempo. So when you have the delay on, it will basically match the tempo. So let's say if you have that, you can choose if you want this tempo to be in this preset only, if you want this to be only in one snapshot, or if you want this to be in all the patches you have. So you choose global. So that's basically, you know, your choice. So when you click on global, every patch that you will choose and select and load, it will basically shows up this tempo. If you click on per patch, you will only have this tempo safe on this, but when I choose, for example, the signature, it's going to have a different tempo. So that's why it's important to have. So make sure to keep that in mind. And yeah, basically just, you know, to save right here your patch when you're done with it. And yeah, honestly, I think that's totally it. So hoping that this video helps you out. If there's any confusion, let me know. Or if there's anything that I need to correct, just let me know. But it should be pretty much the essential idea of how to navigate through the HX edit for your Helix. I'll be honest with you, when I first try out the Helix, I always go on the screen, and it's a pain in the butt to just kind of lean in, or I have to wait till I get home and then just sit down. I just wish that I would continue to do edits while I'm rehearsing or playing live. Or if something does go wrong, I need to check, and I can't lean forward all the time because I would have a risk of breaking my back. So having this connected on the side of the stage with USB will basically tells me that, hey, I have, you know, this problem coming in on one of my overdrives. I just go click on this, and then I'll have it on, make sure my guitar is low, and then I'll just see what's the issue with it. So it's so cool that you can do that. And yeah, that's basically all that is need to be led. So I hope it helps you out. I will make a separate video on how to use IRs and also the snapshot sections and the global tempo settings. So that will be a different video that's going to explain all of that, as well as how to split amps like this to make it full stereo completely. So you have both sides on path A, path B, and you have path B to path A, split in the Y signal to the signal chain to the multi out, and vice versa. You can just move this up and down. You can go ahead and move this to like the center of the signal chain if you want to pan to the left or to the right. Either way, you can just move like that. You can make it to be inverted, so if it goes up and down, be consistent. There is a ton, a ton of things you can do. But that will be explained in a different video discussing full in-depth of what to do on this software to make your tone as big as possible. I created my signature patch for 6 months last year, and about a couple months ago this year I released my patch so everybody can go ahead and just try it out for themselves. So yeah, I will go into depth of how I created my patch, how I use my patch, how to understand things like this and the IRs, the signal chain and the amps, and the bypass controller assigned and vice versa. So I hope this kind of gives you an idea of what to expect on this software. But until then, God bless you. Have yourself a wonderful day, and I'll see you in the next video. Peace.